Welcome to Beyond the Stars, and if you're joining us for the first time tonight, we invite you to subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss our weekly journeys through the cosmos. And if this contemplative approach to astronomy helps you unwind and drift peacefully into sleep, please click that subscribe button and join our growing community of cosmic explorers. Tonight, we embark on a gentle voyage through our home galaxy, the Milky Way, a vast, barred spiral of stars, dust, dark matter and mystery that has been slowly turning through space for over 13.6 billion years. And we will explore 100 remarkable facts about this magnificent structure that cradles our sun, our planet, and everything humanity has ever known. This is not a sensational tour designed to overwhelm, but rather an invitation to let your mind relax, to drift gently into understanding as we explore spiraling arms, ancient halo stars, and the hidden forces that shape our galactic neighborhood. And we are honored to have you with us as we travel through darkness and light. The first fact about the Milky Way is that it is classified as a barred spiral galaxy, confirmed through detailed observations by the Spitzer Space Telescope in 2005. And this means that at its heart lies not a simple spherical bulge, but an elongated bar-shaped structure made of densely packed stars that rotates slowly and channels gas toward the center, fueling bursts of star formation in the galactic core. The second fact reveals that the Milky Way stretches approximately 100,000 to 120,000 light-years across its visible disk. Though, if we include the dark matter halo and the most distant stars scattered in the outer regions, the total diameter may exceed 600,000 light-years, making our galaxy far larger than the glowing spiral we typically imagine. The third fact tells us that despite this enormous width, the galactic disk is remarkably thin, only about 1,000 light-years thick in most regions, giving the Milky Way the shape of a cosmic pancake with a central bulge. And this flatness means we live in a relatively compressed plane, surrounded by stars extending in nearly all directions around us. The fourth fact is that the Milky Way contains somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars, though the exact number remains uncertain because vast dust clouds obscure entire regions of the galaxy, and many stars are too faint, too distant, or too cool to detect, with current technology making a complete census impossible from our vantage point. The fifth fact reveals that our sun is just one ordinary yellow dwarf star among this incomprehensible multitude located about 27,000 light-years from the galactic center in a relatively quiet region between major spiral arms, and this placement has remained stable for billions of years, giving Earth the cosmic stability necessary for complex life to evolve. The sixth fact tells us that we live in a minor structure called the Orion Arm, or Orion Spur, a relatively small lane of stars and gas nestled between two much larger spiral arms. The Perseus Arm, lying farther out, and the Sagittarius Arm closer to the galactic center, and this position in a calm neighborhood between dense stellar highways may have shielded our solar system from frequent gravitational disturbances and nearby supernovae. The seventh fact is that at the very center of the Milky Way, approximately 26,000 to 27,000 light-years from Earth, lies a supermassive black hole called Sagittarius A star, containing the mass of approximately 4.3 million suns, compressed into a region smaller than the orbit of Mercury. The eighth fact reveals that we cannot see this black hole directly, because it emits almost no light, but astronomers have spent decades watching nearby stars orbit around it at tremendous speeds, some completing their elliptical paths in just a few years. And these observations provided definitive proof that an enormous invisible mass sits at our galaxy's heart. The ninth fact tells us that the Milky Way is not stationary in space, but moves at approximately 552 kilometers per second relative to the cosmic microwave background radiation. the faint afterglow of the Big Bang that fills all of space. And this means our entire galaxy and everything within it is on a continuous journey through the universe. The 10th fact is that our solar system orbits the galactic center at about 828,000 kilometers per hour, or roughly 230 kilometers every second. And despite this incredible velocity, it takes approximately 225 million years to complete just one full orbit around the galaxy, a period astronomers call a galactic year. The 11th fact reveals something profound about time and cosmic motion. In all the 4.6 billion years since our solar system formed, Earth has completed only about 20 orbits around the Milky Way, meaning that when the first dinosaurs appeared on Earth, roughly 230 million years ago, our entire solar system was in a completely different part of the galaxy, with different neighboring stars surrounding us. The 12th fact tells us that the stars we see in the night sky are not permanent fixtures, but temporary neighbors drifting past us on their own independent orbital paths. And over millions of years, the familiar constellations we know will slowly shift, distort, and eventually become unrecognizable as stars move through the galaxy at different speeds and in different directions. The 13th fact is that the Milky Way consists of several distinct structural components, each with its own character, age, and stellar population, including the central bulge, the thin disk where we live, a thick disk of older stars, spiral arms bright with young suns, and a vast spherical halo extending far beyond the visible structure. The 14th fact reveals that the central bulge is a dense spherical region surrounding the galactic core, populated mostly with ancient stars that formed billions of years ago when the universe was younger and contained far fewer heavy elements, and these old yellow and red stars give the bulge a warm golden glow when viewed in infrared light. The 15th fact tells us something surprising. When astronomers mapped the central bulge in detail, they discovered it is not perfectly spherical, but appears peanut-shaped or box-shaped when viewed from certain angles. And this unusual three-dimensional geometry results from the rotating bar at the galaxy's center, which over billions of years has buckled and puffed upward, creating complex vertical structures. The 16th fact is that we still don't know exactly how many major spiral arms the Milky Way has, and while this might seem like basic information, astronomers should have determined long ago, mapping the complete structure from our position deep inside the disk obscured by dust and surrounded by billions of stars remains remarkably challenging. The 17th fact reveals that most astronomers currently believe the Milky Way has 4 major spiral arms: the Scutum Centaurus arm, the Carina Sagittarius arm, the Perseus arm, and the Norma outer arm, though some models suggest only 2 dominant arms with additional minor spurs and fragments, and new observations continue to refine our understanding. The 18th fact tells us that spiral arms are not solid permanent structures made of fixed stars, but rather density waves, temporary patterns where matter bunches together as it moves through the disk, similar to a traffic jam on a highway where cars slow down, cluster together, then accelerate and disperse once they pass through the congested region. The 19th fact is that as clouds of gas and dust pass through these density wave compressions, they are squeezed by the increased pressure, and this compression triggers the gravitational collapse of molecular clouds, initiating the birth of new stars, which is precisely why spiral arms appear so bright and blue, illuminated by massive young stars that formed within them. The 20th fact reveals that individual stars drift into spiral arms, shine for a period as part of the visible structure lighting up the arm, then drift out again on their individual orbits, while the density wave pattern itself continues rotating at its own distinct pace, creating the illusion of permanent spiral architecture, when in reality, the material comprising the arms constantly changes and flows. The 21st fact brings us to one of astronomy's deepest mysteries. The Milky Way is held together by something we cannot see, an invisible substance called dark matter that comprises approximately 85 to 90% of the galaxy's total mass, vastly outweighing all the stars' gas, dust, and planets combined. The 22nd fact reveals how astronomers discovered the existence of dark matter by carefully measuring how far stars orbit at different distances from the galactic center. They found that stars in the outer regions move much faster than Newton's, and Einstein's laws of gravity would predict based solely on visible matter, and these outer stars should be flung into intergalactic space unless some enormous quantity of invisible mass is holding the galaxy together. The 23rd fact tells us that dark matter does not emit, absorb, or reflect any form of electromagnetic radiation, making it completely invisible to all types of telescopes, whether they observe invisible light, infrared, radio waves, X-rays, or gamma rays. And it appears to interact with ordinary matter only through the force of gravity, passing through stars, planets, and even our own bodies as if they were not there. The 24th fact is that dark matter forms an enormous invisible halo surrounding the Milky Way, extending far beyond the visible disk to perhaps hundreds of thousands of light-years from the galactic center. And this diffuse spherical halo contains the majority of the galaxy's mass and fundamentally shapes how the entire structure moves, rotates, and evolves over cosmic time. The 25th fact reveals that despite more than 50 years of intensive searching, using increasingly sophisticated detectors and experiments, physicists still do not know what dark matter actually is, whether it consists of unknown subatomic particles, modifications to our understanding of gravity, or something else entirely beyond current theories. The 26th fact tells us that the Milky Way's disk is not perfectly flat but warped like a gently bent vinyl record, curving upward on one side and downward on the other in a graceful wave that extends across the outer regions, and this warping remained completely invisible until radio astronomers mapped the distribution of hydrogen gas extending far beyond the starlight. The 27th fact is that this large-scale warp is thought to be caused by gravitational interactions with dwarf satellite galaxies orbiting the Milky Way, or by the uneven distribution of dark matter in the surrounding cosmic web, creating tidal forces that continuously bend and twist the outer edges of the galactic disk. The 28th fact reveals that the entire Milky Way is permeated by a vast magnetic field threading through the disk, rising into the halo, and weaving through the interstellar medium in complex loops and filaments. And though this field is incredibly weak by terrestrial standards, measuring only about 1/1,000th the strength of Earth's magnetic field over galactic distances, it profoundly influences how cosmic rays travel, how gas clouds collapse, and how the interstellar plasma behaves. The 29th fact tells us about differential rotation, the phenomenon where different parts of the galaxy rotate at different angular speeds rather than moving like a solid wheel, with the inner regions completing orbits much faster than the outer regions. And this uneven rotation creates shearing forces that help maintain and amplify the spiral arm density wave patterns. The 30th fact is that there exists a special distance from the galactic center called the co-rotation radius, approximately where our solar system orbits, where the orbital speed of individual stars matches the rotation speed of the spiral arm density waves themselves. And because we move at nearly the same pace as the arms, we spend less time crossing through the dense, dangerous regions where supernova explosions are more common and gravitational disturbances more frequent, giving our neighborhood a remarkable stability that may have been crucial for the development of complex life on Earth. The 31st fact brings us to the stars themselves. for the Milky Way is not populated by identical suns, but contains an extraordinary diversity of stellar types, ages, sizes, and compositions ranging from ancient red dwarfs that will burn for trillions of years to massive blue giants that live fast and die young in spectacular supernova explosions. The 32nd fact reveals that the galaxy contains more than 150 globular clusters, ancient spherical collections of hundreds of thousands of stars bound tightly together by gravity, orbiting through the galactic halo in long elliptical paths like cosmic moths slowly circling a distant flame. And these clusters can be seen as fuzzy patches of light even with small telescopes. The 33rd fact tells us that globular clusters are among the oldest structures in the Milky Way, with ages typically exceeding 10 to 12 billion years, and many contain stars that formed before the galaxy itself had fully assembled into its current spiral structure, making them living fossils that preserve conditions from the universe's earliest epochs. The 34th fact is that stars within globular clusters are metal poor, meaning they contain very few elements heavier than helium, and this chemical signature indicates they formed when the universe was young, before many generations of supernovae had enriched interstellar space with heavy elements like iron, carbon, and oxygen forged in stellar cores. The 35th fact reveals that some individual stars in the Milky Way's halo appear to be even older than the galaxy itself. And these ancient wanderers, with their extremely low metal content, likely formed in smaller primordial dwarf galaxies that were later gravitationally captured and absorbed by the growing Milky Way, their stars scattered into the halo, where they continue orbiting in long tilted paths that rarely intersect the galactic disk. The 36th fact tells us that astronomers have discovered hypermetal-poor stars containing less than 1/10,000th the iron concentration found in our Sun. And these incredibly rare objects scattered through the halo are believed to be among the second or third generation of stars ever born in the universe, inheriting only faint traces of heavy elements from the very first massive stars that exploded as supernova shortly after the Big Bang. The 37th fact is that the Milky Way also contains more than 1,000 open star clusters, which are looser groupings of young stars born together from the same collapsing molecular cloud. And unlike the ancient tightly bound globular clusters that remain stable for billions of years, open clusters gradually dissolve over tens to hundreds of millions of years as their member stars drift apart into the general galactic star field. The 38th fact reveals that our own Sun was almost certainly born in such an open cluster approximately 4.6 billion years ago, along with perhaps thousands of sibling stars. And these siblings have long since scattered across different regions of the galaxy, making them nearly impossible to identify among the hundreds of billions of other stars, despite the fact that they share our Sun's exact age and chemical composition. The 39th fact tells us about hypervelocity stars, rare fast-moving objects traveling at speeds exceeding 500 kilometers per second, fast enough to eventually escape the Milky Way's gravitational pull entirely and wander alone into intergalactic space. And most of these cosmic speedsters were likely flung outward by gravitational encounters with the supermassive black hole at the galactic center. The 40th fact is that when a binary star system wanders too close to Sagittarius A star, the immense tidal forces can tear the pair apart, with one star captured into a tight orbit around the black hole, while its companion is violently ejected outward like a slingshot, accelerated to tremendous velocities that send it flying through the galaxy and eventually beyond. And these ejection events remind us that even in a galaxy seemingly bound by gravity, there are moments of dramatic and irreversible release. The 41st fact brings us to the ongoing birth of stars for the Milky Way is not a static museum of ancient objects, but remains an active stellar nursery where new suns continue forming from the gravitational collapse of cold, dense molecular clouds. And if you're still with us on this gentle cosmic journey through our galactic home, we would be honored to have you subscribe to Beyond the Stars so you can join us each week as we explore more mysteries of the universe. The 42nd fact reveals that approximately 10 to 15% of the galaxy's baryonic matter, meaning ordinary matter made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and exists not in stars, but as diffuse gas and dust filling the space between stars. And this interstellar medium serves as both the raw material from which new stars form and the repository for material returned by dying stars. The 43rd fact tells us that the largest structures in this interstellar medium are giant molecular clouds, vast cold dark regions that can span hundreds of light years across and contain enough material to create anywhere from thousands to millions of stars. And within these clouds, where temperatures plunge to just 10 or 20 degrees above absolute zero, gravity slowly and inexorably draws matter together into denser and denser clumps. The 44th fact is that when these molecular clouds pass through the compression zones of spiral arm density waves, the additional pressure triggers more rapid and vigorous gravitational collapse, causing fragments throughout the cloud to simultaneously condense into dense cores that eventually heat up enough to ignite nuclear fusion, transforming from cold, dark protostellar objects into brilliantly shining newborn stars. The 45th fact reveals that star formation in the Milky Way has been gradually slowing down over billions of years, and while our galaxy was once a prolific stellar factory during its youth, producing new stars at rates many times higher than today, it has now settled into a more sedate middle age, still actively forming stars, but at a much gentler and more sustainable pace. The 46th fact tells us that the galaxy operates as a vast recycling system, for stars are not permanent fixtures, but temporary structures that live for millions to trillions of years, depending on their mass, then return their accumulated material back to space through gentle stellar winds, expanding planetary nebulae or violent supernova explosions that scatter enriched gas throughout the interstellar medium. The 47th fact is that every single atom in your body, heavier than hydrogen and helium, was forged inside the core of a star through nuclear fusion or created in the intense conditions of a supernova explosion, then scattered into space, where it drifted for millions of years, before eventually becoming incorporated into the molecular cloud that collapsed to form our solar system 4.6 billion years ago. The 48th fact reveals that supernova explosions serve a dual purpose in galactic ecology. For while they mark the violent deaths of massive stars, the powerful shock waves they generate compress nearby molecular clouds and can trigger the gravitational collapse that initiates the next generation of star formation, making stellar death and stellar birth intimately connected in an endless cosmic cycle. The 49th fact tells us that the interstellar medium is not uniform, but contains regions of vastly different densities and temperatures, from hot, low-density bubbles carved out by supernova explosions and stellar winds where temperatures reach millions of degrees, but atoms are spaced hundreds of centimeters apart, to cold, dense molecular clouds where temperatures hover just above absolute zero, but matter is compressed to billions of atoms per cubic centimeter. The 50th fact is that dust grains, tiny solid particles typically less than 1 micrometer across, composed of carbon, silicon, iron, and ice, play a crucial role in star formation, despite making up less than 1% of the interstellar medium by mass, because these grains absorb ultraviolet radiation that would otherwise heat and disperse molecular clouds, allowing them to remain cold enough for gravity to overcome internal pressure and initiate collapse. And by subscribing to our channel, you help us continue creating this kind of thoughtful educational content that explores the intricate mechanisms underlying cosmic phenomena. The 51st fact reveals something that might seem surprising. The Milky Way is currently in the process of colliding with and consuming several smaller satellite galaxies. And these ongoing mergers are not dramatic cataclysmic events, but rather slow gravitational interactions playing out over hundreds of millions of years. As the smaller galaxies are gradually pulled apart and their stars absorbed into our galaxy's halo and disk. The 52nd fact tells us that the largest and most well-known of these satellite galaxies are the Large Magellanic Cloud and the Small Magellanic Cloud, two irregular dwarf galaxies visible to the naked eye from the southern hemisphere as fuzzy patches of light. And these companions orbit the Milky Way at distances of approximately 160,000 and 200,000 light-years respectively. The 53rd fact is that the Magellanic Clouds are connected to each other and to the Milky Way by vast streams of hydrogen gas called the Magellanic Stream and the Magellanic Bridge, structures stretching across more than 600,000 light-years of space. And these gaseous filaments represent material being tidally stripped from the dwarf galaxies by the Milky Way's gravitational influence. The 54th fact reveals that astronomers have identified dozens of other smaller satellite galaxies orbiting the Milky Way, most of them extremely faint dwarf, spheroidal, or dwarf elliptical galaxies containing only millions of stars compared to our galaxy's hundreds of billions. And many of these tiny companions are so dim they were only discovered in recent decades through careful analysis of large sky surveys. The 55th fact tells us about the Sagittarius Dwarf Elliptical Galaxy, a small satellite currently being torn apart by tidal forces as it passes through the Milky Way's disk. And this disruption has created long stellar streams that wrap around our galaxy multiple times like ribbons with individual stars from the doomed dwarf galaxy now scattered across hundreds of thousands of light years. The 56th fact is that by studying the chemical compositions and orbital motions of stars in the Milky Way's halo, astronomers have identified the remnants of numerous ancient merger events. And it appears that our galaxy grew to its current size by consuming dozens or perhaps hundreds of smaller galaxies over billions of years, accreting their stars' gas and dark matter into its steadily growing structure. The 57th fact reveals one particularly significant ancient collision called the Gaia-Enceladus merger, which occurred approximately 10 billion years ago, when a dwarf galaxy containing several billion stars collided with the young Milky Way. And this merger deposited enormous amounts of material into our galaxy's halo and may have fundamentally altered the structure and evolution of the early galactic disk. The 58th fact tells us that in approximately 4 to 5 billion years, the Milky Way will undergo its most dramatic collision, yet when it merges with the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest large galactic neighbor, located about 2.5 million light-years away, and currently approaching us at roughly 110 kilometers per second. The 59th fact is that despite this seemingly high approach velocity, the actual collision will unfold over billions of years as the two galaxies make multiple passes through each other, their shapes distorting into long tidal tails and bridges before finally settling into a single merged elliptical galaxy that astronomers have playfully nicknamed Milkomeda. And during this merger, the supermassive black holes at the centers of both galaxies will likely spiral together and eventually coalesce into an even more massive black hole. The 60th fact reveals something reassuring about this future collision. Despite the dramatic reshaping of both galaxies, individual stars, including our Sun, will almost certainly not collide with other stars, because the distances between stars are so vast compared to their sizes. And while the night sky will change dramatically over millions of years, and our solar system is orbit around the new galactic center, may be altered Earth, and the solar system should survive the merger largely intact. Though by that time, the sun will have already evolved into a red giant and rendered Earth uninhabitable for different reasons entirely. The 61st fact brings us to the most extreme environment in our galaxy, the central few light years surrounding Sagittarius A star, where gravity is so intense that stars orbit at thousands of kilometers per second. And some of these stars complete their elliptical orbits around the invisible black hole in less than 20 years, despite traveling distances comparable to the size of our entire solar system. The 62nd fact reveals that one particular star called S2 or S02 has been observed completing a full orbit in just 16 years, and by carefully measuring its motion, astronomers have confirmed that general relativity accurately describes the extreme gravitational environment near the black hole, including effects like gravitational redshift, where light climbing out of the deep gravity loses energy and shifts toward longer wavelengths. The 63rd fact tells us that while Sagittarius A star is relatively quiet today, emitting only faint radio waves and occasional X-ray flares, there is strong evidence that it was far more active in the past, perhaps as recently as a few million years ago, when it may have shone as a brilliant quasar fed by vast amounts of infalling material. The 64th fact is that astronomers discovered two enormous bubble-shaped structures extending tens of thousands of light years above and below the galactic center, called the Fermi bubbles, after the space telescope that detected them. And these gigantic lobes, glowing in gamma rays, may be remnants of a powerful outburst from the central black hole, or the result of intense starburst activity in the galactic core. The 65th fact reveals that the galactic center region is also home to the central molecular zone, an area containing an extraordinarily high concentration of dense molecular gas and active star formation, despite the disruptive influence of the black hole's gravity and intense radiation from millions of tightly packed stars. The 66th fact tells us that infrared observations have revealed dozens of massive young stars orbiting within a few light years of Sagittarius A star, and the presence of these stars presents a puzzle, because the extreme tidal forces near the black hole should prevent molecular clouds from collapsing to form stars in such a hostile environment. The 67th fact is that the Milky Way's central black hole occasionally captures clouds of gas and dust that wander too close, and astronomers have observed several such clouds, including one designated G2 that passed within a few billion kilometers of the event horizon in 2014, though contrary to some predictions, it survived the encounter largely intact. The 68th fact reveals that studying the motion of stars and gas near the galactic center provides our best laboratory for testing general relativity in extreme gravitational fields. And these observations have confirmed that Einstein's century-old theory accurately describes gravity even in conditions vastly more intense than anything we can recreate or experience in our solar system. The 69th fact tells us that the region within a few thousand light years of the galactic center contains an unusually high concentration of exotic objects, including magnetars, pulsars, supernova remnants, and X-ray binaries, making it one of the most energetic and violent neighborhoods in the entire galaxy. The 70th fact is that despite being hidden behind dense clouds of gas and dust that block visible light, the galactic center can be observed using infrared radio and X-ray telescopes, and these multi-wavelength observations have revolutionized our understanding of the complex and dynamic processes occurring at the heart of our galaxy. The 71st fact brings us to the galactic halo, a vast spherical region surrounding the disk that extends hundreds of thousands of light-years from the galactic center and contains ancient stars, globular clusters, streams of tidally disrupted dwarf galaxies, and enormous quantities of dark matter that comprise the majority of the Milky Way's total mass. The 72nd fact reveals that stars in the halo move on highly elliptical orbits that are randomly oriented rather than confined to the galactic plane, giving the halo a roughly spherical shape. And these stars often plunge through the disk at high velocities before arcing back out into the halo for another pass, millions of years later. The 73rd fact tells us that the galactic halo preserves a fossil record of the Milky Way's assembly history for the chemical composition's ages. And orbital motions of halo stars reveal information about the smaller galaxies that were consumed over billions of years. And by studying these stellar populations, astronomers can reconstruct the merger history of our galaxy, like archaeologists piecing together ancient events from scattered fragments. The 74th fact is that the Milky Way is constantly being bombarded by cosmic rays, high-energy particles, mostly consisting of protons and atomic nuclei that travel at nearly the speed of light. And while most cosmic rays originate from supernova explosions within our galaxy, some arrive from distant galaxies and carry information about the most energetic processes in the universe. The 75th fact reveals that these cosmic rays are deflected by the galaxy's magnetic field, causing them to spiral along field lines and bounce between magnetic irregularities. And this magnetic confinement means cosmic rays take millions of years to escape the galaxy, even though they travel at relativistic speeds. The 76th fact tells us that cosmic rays play an important role in galactic evolution because they carry energy throughout the interstellar medium, ionizing gas atoms, influencing the chemistry of molecular clouds, and providing pressure that helps support gas against gravitational collapse, thereby regulating the pace of star formation. The 77th fact is that the chemical composition of the Milky Way has evolved dramatically over billions of years through a process called chemical evolution, beginning with a universe composed almost entirely of hydrogen and helium after the Big Bang, and gradually becoming enriched with heavier elements forged in stellar cores and dispersed by supernova explosions. The 78th fact reveals that by measuring the abundances of different elements in stars of various ages, astronomers can trace this chemical enrichment history and learn about the rates of star formation and supernova explosions throughout the galaxy's past, with older stars containing fewer heavy elements and younger stars like our Sun showing much higher metallicity. The 79th fact tells us that different elements are produced by different stellar processes, with lighter elements like carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen forged primarily through nuclear fusion in the cores of massive stars, while heavier elements like iron come mainly from type Ia supernova explosions of white dwarf stars. And the heaviest elements like gold and platinum are created in the extreme conditions of neutron star mergers. The 80th fact is that this means the atoms in your body have remarkably diverse origins scattered across space and time, with the hydrogen in your water molecules dating back to the Big Bang itself, the carbon in your DNA forged in the core of a massive star billions of years ago, the iron in your blood created in a supernova explosion, and the gold in any jewelry you wear synthesized in the collision of two neutron stars, perhaps in a different galaxy entirely, before the material eventually made its way to the molecular cloud that formed our solar system. The 81st fact brings us toward our journey's end by contemplating the Milky Way's future. For while our galaxy appears eternal and unchanging on human timescales, it's actually in the midst of a slow but inexorable evolution that will dramatically transform it over billions of years. And if you've stayed with us through this entire cosmic meditation, We would be deeply grateful if you would subscribe to Beyond the Stars, enable notifications, and share this video with others who appreciate contemplative explorations of the universe. The 82nd fact reveals that star formation in the Milky Way will likely continue for many billions of years, but at an ever-decreasing rate as the galaxy gradually exhausts its supply of cold, dense gas, and eventually perhaps 50 to 100 billion years from now. The last star will form, and the galaxy will consist entirely of aging stars, slowly fading into darkness. The 83rd fact tells us that long before this happens, approximately 4 to 5 billion years from now, the merger with Andromeda will reshape the Milky Way completely, transforming both galaxies from elegant spirals into a single large elliptical galaxy where stars orbit in random directions rather than in an ordered disk. And by subscribing to our channel, you help us continue creating thoughtful content that explores these vast cosmic timescales. The 84th fact is that the Milky Way exists within a larger structure called the local group, a collection of more than 50 galaxies bound together by gravity and spanning approximately 10 million light-years, with the Milky Way and Andromeda being the two dominant members and dozens of smaller dwarf galaxies orbiting around them. The 85th fact reveals that the local group itself is part of an even larger structure called the Virgo supercluster, which contains thousands of galaxies distributed across about 110 million light-years. And this supercluster is in turn part of an enormous filamentary structure called the Laniakea supercluster, demonstrating that galaxies are organized into a vast cosmic web stretching across the observable universe. The 86th fact tells us that the Milky Way is moving through space not just because of its orbital motion within the local group, but also because the entire local group is falling toward the Virgo cluster at several hundred kilometers per second, drawn by the combined gravity of thousands of galaxies concentrated in that region. The 87th fact is that despite containing hundreds of billions of stars and vast quantities of gas dust and dark matter, the Milky Way is mostly empty space. And if you could shrink the galaxy down to the size of Earth, individual stars would be smaller than grains of sand separated by many meters, illustrating the incredible vastness and emptiness of space, even within galactic structures. The 88th fact reveals something humbling about our cosmic address. Earth is a small planet orbiting an ordinary star in an unremarkable region of a typical barred spiral galaxy that is one among hundreds of billions of galaxies scattered throughout the observable universe. And yet this tiny world is the only place in all of space and time that we know with certainty harbors life consciousness and the ability to contemplate these cosmic mysteries. The 89th fact tells us that the very fact we can observe, measure, and understand the Milky Way represents something profound about the universe itself. For the cosmos has evolved from a simple state of nearly uniform hydrogen and helium after the Big Bang into a complex structured universe containing galaxies, stars, planets, and eventually living beings capable of looking outward and comprehending their place within the vast cosmic story. The 90th fact is that studying the Milky Way teaches us not just about our specific galaxy, but about galaxies in general. For while each galaxy is unique, they all follow similar physical laws and undergo similar evolutionary processes, and by understanding our galactic home in detail, we gain insights into the billions of other galaxies scattered throughout the observable universe. The 91st fact reveals that despite centuries of observations and decades of sophisticated space-based astronomy, we are still discovering fundamental new things about the Milky Way, from unexpected stellar streams revealing ancient mergers to mysterious high-energy phenomena in the galactic center, reminding us that even our cosmic backyard contains secrets waiting to be uncovered. The 92nd fact tells us that future missions and telescopes will continue revealing new details about our galaxy's structure, history, and evolution, and we invite you to join us on this ongoing journey of discovery by subscribing to Beyond the Stars, where we explore these revelations each week with the same contemplative approach you've experienced tonight. The 93rd fact is that the Milky Way will outlive our Sun, and indeed outlive all current stars, for even after our Sun dies. In about 5 billion years, the galaxy will continue evolving, forming new stars from recycled material, absorbing additional dwarf galaxies, and slowly transforming through its eventual merger with Andromeda. The 94th fact reveals that we are incredibly fortunate to live in an era when the Milky Way is visible from Earth. For as the universe expands and accelerates, distant galaxy clusters are being carried away faster than light can travel, eventually disappearing beyond our cosmic horizon. And in the far future, astronomers will observe a much lonelier universe, with only the merged remnant of our local group visible against an otherwise empty sky. The 95th fact tells us that everything we have discussed tonight, every star, every molecular cloud, every spiral arm, every ancient halo star, every future collision, is part of one coherent cosmic system bound together by gravity and evolving according to the fundamental laws of physics that govern all of space and time. The 96th fact is that the Milky Way reminds us of our deep connection to the cosmos, for we are not separate from the galaxy, but part of it, made from its matter, illuminated by its stars, and sustained by the cosmic processes that have unfolded over billions of years to create the conditions necessary for life. The 97th fact reveals that as you rest tonight beneath this great wheel of stars, you are quite literally traveling through space on a planet orbiting a star that is itself orbiting the galactic center at hundreds of kilometers per second. And even in sleep, you are part of this grand cosmic motion. The 98th fact tells us that the pale band of light we call the Milky Way, visible on dark nights, is not something distant, but rather our view from within, looking out through the disk at billions of stars whose combined light creates that misty glow stretching across the sky. The 99th fact is that contemplating the Milky Way's vastness, age, and complexity can inspire a sense of cosmic perspective that helps us recognize both our smallness in the grand scheme of things and the remarkable improbability and preciousness of our existence as conscious beings capable of understanding the universe that created us. The 100th and final fact brings our journey full circle. The Milky Way is not just our galactic address, but our cosmic home, a vast island of matter and energy drifting through the darkness of space, and by taking time to understand it, to contemplate its structure and history and future, we connect ourselves to something far larger than our individual lives, participating in humanity's ancient quest to comprehend the cosmos and our place within it. And we thank you for joining us on this peaceful journey through the galaxy, and we warmly invite you once more to subscribe to Beyond the Stars, to share this video with fellow cosmic explorers, to comment with your thoughts about our galactic home, and to return next week as we continue exploring the wonders of the universe together. And now, as you drift into sleep, may you carry with you a sense of connection to the billions of stars slowly wheeling through space, to the ancient processes that created the atoms in your body, and to the ongoing cosmic story of which we are all a small but meaningful part. Good night, and may the mysteries of the Milky Way accompany your dreams.